Chapter 1. A person's life came in many different forms. Everyone's life was different, but if one thought about it carefully, they would all be similar. It was like fate's joke. However, fate would often play a little joke on people. The sun slowly rose, and sunlight shone on every corner of the earth. A new day had begun, and people began to move. In an ordinary house, a teenager who looked to be about 16 or 17 years old pressed the buzzing alarm. He sat up and paused quietly. A few minutes later, he got out of bed. He first washed up and quickly made breakfast. After finishing breakfast, he packed his bag, put on his school uniform, took the key, locked the door and left. The teenager's name was Wu-Ming. Because he was an orphan, he was picked up by the director of an orphanage who did not know how to give names. Coincidentally, the director's surname was Wu, so he was given such a strange name. However, Wu-Ming was not famous when he was young, but in the process of growing up, Wu-Ming became a problematic child. Fortunately, there was a decent director of an orphanage who took him in and taught him. Other than being a little mischievous, Wu-Ming could be considered a normal person. The director of the orphanage was a lonely old man. When he adopted Wu-Ming, he was 70 years old. He let Wu-Ming go to school before he was old enough to go to school. Until now, Wu-Ming was 16 years old, and was in his third year of high school. However, not long ago, the director of the orphanage passed away at the age of 86. Wu-Ming did not cry when the director passed away. Many people were surprised by this, but in reality, this was not the case. Before the director passed away, he had spent some time alone with Wu-Ming. People thought that this was to give him his last inheritance. The director did indeed give Wu-Ming something, a jade pendant amulet. However, most importantly, the director said to him, "I know that your heart is not bad. I cannot give you fatherly or motherly love, but you are a strong child. No matter what path you take in the future, I hope that you will not forget your own heart. Don't cry for me after I leave." Due to the old principal's teachings and his own reasons, Wu-Ming's heart was tougher and stronger than the average person. Because of this toughness, Wu-Ming did not cry. However, if one were to observe closely, they would notice that after the old principal's death, Wu-Ming's entire personality was exceptionally gloomy, just like an injured beast. Due to the upcoming college entrance examination, Wu-Ming's gloominess had almost disappeared. A year ago, the old dean had said that he wanted to see Wu-Ming get into a good university. The old dean did not have the chance, but Wu-Ming still remembered that the college entrance examination was in a week's time. However, Wu-Ming's heart did not waver. To be precise, it was because Wu-Ming was too smart. When Wu-Ming was first picked up by the old principal, the number of times he cried and threw tantrums was obviously much less than other children his age. No, it was terrifyingly little. During the period when Wu-Ming was growing up, the old principal had discovered Wu-Ming's talent when Wu-Ming was 3 years old. The old principal had bought some preschool education books, and in just a year, the old principal had discovered that Wu-Ming's knowledge was comparable to that of a second-grade elementary school student. Therefore, the old principal had used some legal means to send little Wu-Ming to a local primary school. He had even specifically instructed little Wu-Ming not to appear too smart. Because little Wu-Ming was a problematic child, although little Wu-Ming was always first in his exams and did not appear on the news, he was still known as a problematic child prodigy by the locals. Time flew by in the blink of an eye. The college entrance examination was over, and the results were out. Wu-Ming was undoubtedly the top scorer in the college entrance examination. Just like that, on the day little Wu-Ming received his acceptance letter, he packed his luggage and boarded the train to the capital. However, when the train arrived at the station, no one noticed that there was actually one less person on the train. In a dark tunnel filled with dazzling starlight, a young man was slowly floating in an unknown direction. Wu-Ming opened his eyes and looked at the space-time tunnel that was filled with flowing light. His eyes were filled with curiosity and excitement. After a while, a low moan sounded. "Am I not human?" Wu-Ming said indifferently. "That's right." Wu-Ming was actually not human, but a creature born from the roots, the root dragon. In fact, the jade amulet that the old principal had given Wu-Ming on the day of his death contained a scale. This scale was the key to unlocking Wu-Ming's identity. This key conveyed information to Wu-Ming in the form of dreams when he slept at night. In the dark vortex, a faint light was scooped up by a great power. After signing a contract, it was sent to another world. After that, the light turned into a baby and floated in front of the old principal's door. The child held a pale golden scale in his hand. When the old principal picked up the child and touched the scale, the old principal received the message of Wu Ming's birth stored in the scale. As a modern atheist, the scene just now had a considerable impact on the old principal. However, this did not affect the old principal's decision to take in Wu Ming. After taking in Wu Ming for some time, he realized that the scale seemed to receive the message no matter who touched it. Therefore, the old principal learned the technique of making amulets, and wrapped the dragon scale in artificial jade to make it into an amulet. It was also because he knew about Wu Ming's identity that the old principal did not express any opinion about Wu Ming's inhuman talent. He even specifically reminded Wu Ming not to appear too smart. Although Wu Ming did not like to talk and did not have many facial expressions, this did not mean that Wu Ming had a personality flaw. Well, it was just a little. This was the price of being born from the roots in exchange for unparalleled talent. Wu Ming knew that as a higher and more mysterious being, he could not live in a world without any mysteries. In the end, Wu Ming decided to leave the world that raised him. And the way to leave was through Wu Ming's contract with a greater power. Simply speaking, Wu Ming had signed a contract with the restraining power of the M-shaped moon world. However, this was not the case. Wu Ming was still connected to the roots. This root was not the same as the one that was connected to Wu Ming was the common root of all worlds, known as the greater root. The root of the M-shaped moon world was merely a lower product of the greater root, known as the lesser root. If not for an accident, Wu Ming should have been an origin dragon born in the greater root, but he was born in the M-shaped moon world's root. This way, the restraining power of the M-shaped moon world could be said to have picked up a bargain. For Wu Ming, whether he was born in the greater root or the lesser root, the nature was the same. This was because the greater and lesser roots originated from the same root, so it would not affect Wu Ming himself. If there was an effect, it would be that the birthplace was different. Now, Wu Ming was heading towards the M-shaped moon world, which was the world he was born in. Because he was not familiar with the space-time tunnel, Wu Ming lightly touched a bright spot on the tunnel wall. Instantly, Wu Ming disappeared. Chapter 2. After being sucked into the space-time tunnel, Wu Ming fainted. When he woke up, he found himself lying on the ground, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that Wu Ming was shocked when he saw the sky. The sky was gray just like the kingdom of the dead, Wu Ming said slowly. Seems like you have good eyesight, a female voice said. Wu Ming turned his head and saw an extremely beautiful woman. She looked to be around 20 years old. Her body was wrapped in a black and purple tight suit. Very few parts of her body were covered in light armor. Her purple hair reached her waist and swayed in the wind. She slowly walked towards Wu Ming step by step. You're clearly a living person. Yet you've entered the country of shadows. Seriously. As if she had noticed something amiss, her purple eyes focused and looked carefully. Smiling, she said, "So that's how it is. An origin dragon? It seems that even the heavens are helping me. May I ask where this is? And who are you?" Out of caution, Wu Ming was very polite, but he didn't let his guard down just because the other party was a woman. "Yes, although she's very beautiful." "Oh, you seem to have accidentally barged in. Origin dragon, don't you know me?" she said. Seems like she's a big shot, Wu Ming thought. "I'm sorry, I really don't know how I got in, and I don't know who you are. Then from today onwards, you are my first disciple. I am Skaha, the queen of the demonic realm, the gatekeeper of the kingdom of the dead." Scat-hack. Wu Ming was shocked. As the top scorer of the college entrance examination, Wu Ming was naturally well-read. Of course, he knew about the demonic realm, one of the Celtic mythological secret realms. The queen of the demonic realm, the powerful god of war and gatekeeper, Skaha. Skaha had a keen eye that could see through the qualities and temperament of others, especially if the other party was mortal or not. It was also because Wu Ming was the origin dragon that Skaha couldn't see through Wu Ming's qualities and temperament at first glance. Naturally, he also knew Skaha's sad wish, to let someone else kill her. And as Skaha couldn't find anyone who could kill her, He decided to nurture someone who could kill him. According to what Skaha had said about his first disciple, it seemed that Skaha had just come up with the idea of nurturing someone who could kill him when he met the talented dragon of origins Wuming. Skaha chuckled when he saw the shocked expression on the dragon's face. It seems that you do know who I am. So are you willing to be my disciple, weak origin dragon? Yes, I'm willing, master. Wuming agreed after thinking for a while. Wuming urgently needed an opportunity to become stronger. And now that there was an opportunity to become stronger in front of him, how could he let it go? Wuming wasn't angry at being called weak. In fact, it was the truth. He was born not long ago, less than 20 years old, and was very weak. He couldn't even perform the most basic of root dragon abilities. He could only transform into human form with the help of suppression. All in all, he was quite weak now. This was also the reason why Wuming decided to leave that mysterious world. The greater the danger, the greater the opportunity. In that world, as the dragon of origins, Wuming couldn't gain any strength. Of course, that was true if his brain wasn't considered as strength. Very well. I believe that if it were you, you would definitely be able to fulfill my wish, Skaha said with a smile. Skaha smiled and said, remember, when you have the ability to kill me, don't hesitate to kill me. This smile made Wuming feel very sad. Just like that, the news of the young origin dragon becoming the first disciple of the Queen of the Demonic Realm was spread throughout Celtic by Cuchulainn. The next morning, Wuming walked out of a small wooden house and looked at the sky. I'm used to seeing clear skies and white clouds. I'm really not used to such a dark sky. Yesterday, Skaha brought Wuming here and said, you can rest for the night. Training will officially begin tomorrow. After that, he didn't care about Wuming's feelings and walked away. Seriously, is he too excited because he found a chance to kill me? Wuming thought of that poignant smile again. While he was thinking, a spear suddenly fell from the sky and stabbed into the ground in front of Wuming. Exclamation point. Wuming was so scared that he took a step back. This is... Wuming looked at the silver holy spear. The spear emitted holy magic. As the dragon of origins, Wuming could naturally sense the magic emitted by the spear. Today, your mission is to gain the approval of this spear, Skaha said as he walked over from afar. Question mark. Gaining the approval of the spear doesn't seem to be that easy, Wuming thought. This is actually transformed from the core of the Yggdrasil. As I'm used to using spears, I transformed it into a spear. Skaha paused and continued. If you don't want to use a spear, you can change its appearance after you've gained its approval. However, you have to remember that once you've approved of the appearance that you've chosen, it won't change anymore. Instead, it will evolve again and become a relic, the noble phantasm. Noble phantasm. Wuming was familiar with this term. When he was born, the dragon scale also transmitted the basic knowledge of the M-shaped moon world to Wuming's mind. In the M-shaped moon world, a noble phantasm was the ultimate weapon of a servant. It was the miracle of materialization, the proof of heroism held by the servant, the crystallization of the human's yearning for miracles, and the strongest weapon known as the noble phantasm. It was similar to magic but more advanced as it was a weapon made from the human's imagination. It was the weapon, symbol, and unique skill of a servant. Of course, it was also a good weapon, and it could also be a skill. Of course, it was also denied that it was an object that was not refined by the human's imagination. In fact, many noble phantasms were transformed from ordinary soldiers. Other than skill noble phantasms, all kinds of weapon noble phantasms existed before. After being refined by the human's imagination, it became the noble phantasm. All in all, the noble phantasm was the trump card. It was a very effective life-saving method for the young dragon of origins Wuming. Now even if Skaha did not let Wuming get the spear, Wuming would not agree. Okay master, watch me. Wuming smiled, and there was a hint of vertical pupils faintly appearing in his eyes. Oh, then I'll wait and see, Sira. Because of the name Wuming, Skaha thought that Wuming equals silence equals silence. Wuming emphasized more than once that he was Wuming, not silence. God knows why Skaha spoke modern English. Was it because he was outside the timeline, so he could speak modern English? By the way, when Skaha and Wuming met for the first time, they also spoke modern English. Skaha convinced Wuming with the reason that, if we speak ancient Celtic, you definitely won't understand it. It's a weak origin dragon full of modern flavor. Wuming took a deep breath and exhaled. He walked forward, held the spear with both hands and closed his eyes. At that moment, there was only one thought in his mind. The path of the strong, I'm coming. Just like that, Wuming began to practice. Chapter 3. In the magical realm, the sky was still dark, giving people an indescribable feeling. In the silent forest, it gave people a sense of oppression. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound. Roar. Then came the roar of a beast. However, this voice sounded like the desperate cry of a beast on the brink of death. Plop. The corpse of a 5-meter-tall black tiger fell to the ground. A young man stood in front of the tiger's corpse. He brandished his spear and carried it on his back. Phew. I've finally completed the task given to Master. This was Wuming, who was Baskahar's master. At this time, Wuming had been apprenticed to Baskahar for 3 years. 3 years ago, Wuming used 7 days to obtain the approval of the Spear of the World Tree, and completed the weapon's final form. Because Wuming had no prior experience in martial arts, Wuming didn't deliberately change the shape of the weapon. It was still a spear. After that, Baskahar focused on Wuming's physical and magical characteristics, as the Dragon of Origin, and first laid the foundation for Wuming. During this year, he also taught Wuming the 18 primordial Lune. As the Dragon of Origin, Wuming had a very high affinity with magical power. In layman's terms, it was a talent for learning magic. What was called magic in other worlds was called magic in the mid-moon world. Magic was a phenomenon that transcended common sense. It's a general term for artificially recreating mysteries and miracles. This was the evaluation of magic. Magic in the mid-moon world was in a more awkward position. The more people knew, the weaker the magic. For example, if everyone knew Fireball, then Fireball could only be used as a flame. If only one person knew Fireball, then he only needed to use a little magic to release a super large fireball that could destroy a village. Of course, the power of the magic was related to the amount of magic used. Wuming used 3 months to completely memorize and master the 18 primordial Lune. He also learned some Celtic language to communicate with the outside world. As for the Lune rune, although Wuming was still not proficient in it, his proficiency in it had already shocked Skaha. As expected of the Dragon of Origins, Skaha had said back then. In the next 2 years, Wuming continued to learn from Skaha's wisdom and martial arts. Apart from spear arts, Wuming also learned how to use other common weapons such as swords, bows, and shields. After 3 years, it could be said that Wuming had inherited all of Skaha's skills. Therefore, as his master, Skaha began to assign tasks to Wuming. The first thing Wuming had to face was a black tiger at the magical beast level. It was the corpse from earlier. Wuming glanced at the black tiger's corpse and realized that it had already turned into ashes and disappeared with the wind. As expected, the dead in the kingdom of the dead cannot be completely killed. Of course. The black tiger's corpse seemed to have turned into ashes, but in fact, it had returned to its previous residence. The residents in the kingdom of the dead wouldn't die again because they had already died. Of course, if there were methods that targeted the soul or instant death, they could also be killed. Let's go. Wuming turned and left, as if he was talking to himself, or to the others. After a short while, Skaha appeared out of thin air, and the surrounding Lune runes disappeared. This was the rune's way of concealing one's aura. Have you discovered me? You're from the Origin after all. You've grown so much in just 3 years. Not bad, my lovely disciple. Skaha seemed to have thought of something and smiled. Seems like my wish can come true. After that, he arranged a few more runes around himself and disappeared. Master, I'm back. Wuming returned to the place where he had descended. There were already 2 wooden houses built here. Wuming knocked on the door of one of the houses and shouted. Skaha opened the door. As expected of Sira, that magical beast didn't affect you at all, Skaha said with a smile. Of course. I'm the first disciple of the Queen of the Ink Realm. How could that little cat stop me? Wuming pretended to be calm. His expression didn't change at all, but the pride in his voice was obvious. As for the name, Wuming didn't care. He would just treat it as a name from the Celtic region. All right, come in and eat. I have a task for you after dinner. After that, Skaha turned around and walked into the house. Although Skaha was his master, he felt more like a big sister to Wuming. Wuming had a rare smile on his face. In a forest, Wuming carried his luggage and held the spear of the world tree. He looked up at the sky and said, "It's been more than 3 years since I saw the blue sky. How I miss it." Wuming recalled Skaha's words. "You won't grow even if you continue to stay here. From today onwards, go out and train. I hope you can fulfill my wish when we meet again. Even if I have the ability to kill you, I won't, Ma. Sister Skaha." In fact, Wuming lacked love. Before meeting Skaha, Wuming only had one relative, and that was the dean. Wuming became a problem child because there was no one around who could accept him, especially after he discovered that he was different from others. After the dean's death, Wuming left that world without hesitation after fulfilling the dean's last wish. Because of Wuming's personality, both his teachers and classmates treated him as a problem child. Only his neighbors treated Wuming better. Therefore, Wuming didn't miss leaving that world at all. However, during the 3 years he lived with Skaha, Wuming experienced a different kind of care from the dean. Wuming and Skaha didn't only have a master-disciple relationship, but also a brother-sister relationship. Skaha also saw it. She didn't expect Wuming, who looked very modern, to be so pure and simple. As it was her first time taking in a disciple, not only did Skaha have a fondness for talent, but she also developed a love for her younger brother. After all, Wuming's heart was so pure. This was the dragon of origins. The stronger something was, the purer it was. Being inexperienced, he didn't fit in with others due to his purity. Now, Wuming was facing a problem. He didn't know where he was. "Master, you've really given me a good start," Wuming said with a wry smile. "Then, let's fill our stomachs first." With that said, he walked into the depths of the forest. An hour later, in a cave deep in the forest, Wuming sat on a rock with a fire in front of him. On top of the fire were some wooden racks. Some meat and 2 huge bear paws were being roasted on the racks. Outside the cave was the carcass of a huge bear. I remember seeing bear paws in a book before. I wonder if they're delicious. Poor demonic bear. In fact, Wuming wanted to go to the depths of the forest to pick some wild fruits. Because of the powerful creatures in the depths of the forest, wild fruits were more abundant than in the periphery. He didn't expect to meet this demonic bear halfway. The bear wanted to attack Wuming, but it ended up as Wuming's dinner. While Wuming was roasting, he looked at the bear outside. This bear skin can be used to sleep. Just like that, night fell. Wuming welcomed the first night of his adventure. Chapter 4. The next day, Wuming embarked on his journey. He walked through forests and fought monsters. He passed by villages and was welcomed by the villagers. He escaped from a cave and was chased by a terrifying dragon. When he was tired, he would look for a cave or a big tree. When he was thirsty, he would look for a mountain spring or a stream. When he was hungry, he would pick some wild fruits and hunt occasionally. Skaha was undoubtedly an experienced warrior and teacher. He was able to teach an inexperienced modern person to become so experienced in 3 years. Of course, the reason why he could travel freely in this era was also related to Wuming's root dragon bloodline. In short, Wuming experienced many adventures that modern people would call fantasy. In the end, he came to a place called Connaught. Is this Connaught? Wuming was wearing a linen shirt. He carried a simple luggage and his approved gun. By the way, Wuming could not turn the gun into a noble relic. The gun could only be considered a secret treasure. "Maybe it's because I'm not a hero," Wuming once said. In fact, Wuming did not have high expectations for his weapon to become a noble relic. After all, a noble relic was the crystallization of miracles. A few days ago, Wuming met a group of roadblocks. Wuming had a friendly conversation with them. They kindly pointed the way to the nearest country to Wuming. Connaught. I remember they said that the lord of this territory is called, what was it again? Tini Makani. I think that's the name. To be honest, the people who lived in the era of the gods, whether it was a lord or a king, a commoner or a noble, were all creatures who lived under the rule of the gods. From Silent Wonder's point of view, the gods of the West were just a race with strange and powerful powers. In fact, this statement was not wrong. Silent Wonder's master, Skaha, had killed too many gods in the past, which led to him being cursed by the dead god, turning him into a human without dying. In summary, Wu-Ming entered Lord Tinny's mansion and had a friendly conversation. The Lord of Connaught was a smart man. Wu-Ming successfully became a resident of the city and the Lord's bodyguard. God knew where Wu-Ming was when he left the demonic realm. It was not easy for him to find a country. Wu-Ming did not want to live in the open anymore. Who would want to live a life without a fixed residence when there was a good life? Wu-Ming was the same. Just like that, Wu-Ming settled down in the Connaught area. Because it was the era of gods, a large number of magical creatures roamed around. In contrast, there was a large number of people with powerful powers. They were the legendary heroes of the later generations. As the western region of Ireland, Connaught naturally had its own heroes. However, because Wu-Ming had been wandering around for a while, some of the more powerful magical creatures in the depths of the area ran to the outskirts. These heroes could not resist them. Once, a magical creature that was close to the level of a phantasmal beast wreaked havoc in Connaught. When everyone was in despair, Wu-Ming wielded the spear of Yggdrasil and used the Lune Rune to kill the magical creature after a few rounds of battle. Since then, the great hero who slayed the powerful magical creatures to protect Connaught, Celander, spread throughout Ireland. As his battle style was incomparably violent, just like a giant dragon, Wu-Ming was given the title of Dragon of Connaught. After that, Wu-Ming realized that the spear of Yggdrasil in his hand had some slight changes. It was as if because its master had become a hero, it had to be worthy of its master. It gave Wu-Ming the feeling that it was going to evolve into a treasure artifact. During this period of time in Connaught, apart from practicing the Lune Rune and honing his martial arts, Wu-Ming also began to study the map of this world. This world was undoubtedly a world with a shaped moon. After coming to this world, Wu-Ming's mana was connected to Wu-Ming's origin. However, Wu-Ming realized that he was now in the period between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD, which was the period of mythological history when the Ulster heroes and the Fiona Knights were active. According to Wu-Ming's analysis, the mythological knowledge he learned in the previous world did not match in this world. For example, Wu-Ming's master, Skahar, was not mentioned in detail in Celtic mythology. It only stated that Skahar lived in the Shadow Kingdom, one of the Celtic fairyland. She was the king of the netherworld that accepted the dead and spirits. She was also the gatekeeper of the Shadow Kingdom, a god of war who had the skills to surpass the divine realm. Due to killing countless spirits, humans and gods, as well as having the skills to surpass the divine realm, she was cursed to be immortal. In the 3 years that he spent with Skahar, Wu-Ming realized that Skahar was a gentle big sister next door when she was not training him. When she was training, she was an extraordinary queen. Wu-Ming did not know about the others, but he liked the feeling of being a big sister to Skahar. This kind of familial feeling was only given to Wu-Ming by the old courtyard. Wu-Ming believed that this was not the only thing that was wrong. Therefore, he decided to leave Connaught and investigate the other regions. Just as Wu-Ming decided to leave, the Lord of Connaught suddenly received a message from the King of Ireland. Princess Maeve, who was avoiding political marriage, was sent to Connaught to become the new lord. According to the historical records, Maeve was a polyamorous young lady who was engaged and married many kings and warriors. She was always a noble lady. Unlike Skahar's warrior queen temperament, Maeve had the temperament of a queen who controlled a country. In the myth, Maeve had announced the 3 requirements for becoming her husband, as well as her system of rotating husbands. In short, Wu-Ming did not have a good impression of Maeve before he met her. As a person who had received modern education, Wu-Ming did not like the character Mai Fu. However, this was also an opportunity to verify the differences between the mythological stories that Wu-Ming knew and the characters in the Shape Moon world. After receiving the news, Wu-Ming did not care about the former Lord, Dini, who was making a fuss. The Queen of Connaught, Maeve, who started the long march to capture the bull in Ulster's greatest war. This is really interesting. Let me see the difference between you and the mythological record, Queen Maeve. Wu Ming said with a smile. On the other side, on the road to Connaught. In a carriage with an army escort. A beautiful girl with a perfect body like a goddess was sitting in the seat, muttering something. Sira, the dragon of Connaught, ah, what a powerful and handsome name. And Maeve, the queen of Connaught, humph, here I come, my little sigh. Wu Ming, who was far away in Connaught, suddenly felt a chill on his back, and his body trembled, but he did not care. In this way, Wu Ming welcomed the most difficult woman in his life. Chapter 5. Due to various reasons and the lack of transportation in Ireland at that time, Wu Ming learned from Deanie that Maeve would only arrive in Connaught after at least a month. As the Lord of Connaught, Deanie, who was going to retire in a month, told the envoy that he would welcome Princess Maeve warmly. Initially, Wu Ming thought that he was going to rebel, but Deanie did not dare to do so. If he rebelled, the rest of the Irish territories would not hesitate to submit a petition to the King of Ireland to attack him. A bunch of old foxes. Wu Ming was speechless. Knowing that Maeve would take a month to reach Connaught, Wu Ming decided to go to the outskirts to train for a month. Wu Ming realized that the Spear of World Tree in his hand was getting hotter after he defeated the monsters and guarded Connaught. The heat made Wu Ming feel comfortable, as if Wu Ming was a tree sprouting in spring. Therefore, Wu Ming decided to go into seclusion to upgrade his relic. Skaha said that strictly speaking, Wu Ming did not belong to this world. Therefore, Wu Ming did not need the human imagination of the later generations to sublimate his relic. As long as he had the opportunity and grasped it, he could upgrade his skills or weapons into a relic. This was undoubtedly a great piece of news. This gave Wu Ming an effective way to become stronger. Not far away from Connaught, Wu Ming found a cave where the monsters that Wu Ming had killed lived. He blocked the entrance of the cave with a giant rock and added a Lune rune. After he was ready, Wu Ming began to upgrade the Spear of World Tree. I remember Master said that upgrading a weapon into a relic would only happen when there is an appropriate time. I still have to rely on myself. Wu Ming recalled. Then Wu Ming sat on the ground with his legs crossed and wrapped the spear with magic power. It floated in front of Wu Ming. Just like that, in the dark cave, Wu Ming began to upgrade his first relic. Half a month later. Rumble. A mountain in the outskirts of Connaught was shaking as if there was an earthquake. It was accompanied by a thunderous sound. There was a giant rock at the foot of the mountain. There were cracks on the rock and a touch of green could be vaguely seen through the cracks. Crack. Crack. The cracks on the giant rock kept on cracking, making an ear-piercing sound. Boom. The giant rock exploded into small pieces of gravel. A 10-meter-tall tree grew out of the hole behind the giant rock. Finally, the noble phantasm has been upgraded. Wu Ming smiled. The gun in Wu Ming's hand had disappeared, but there was a white gauntlet on his left hand. The front part of the gauntlet extended out a tree branch, and the end of the branch was the towering tree. Yggdrasil of Yggdrasil, 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 Igan Yggdrasil, 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 Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil, Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil's real name was to reproduce the growth of the Yggdrasil. The length and direction of growth would be determined by the amount of magical power provided by the master. When Wu Ming broke the giant rock, he only used a little bit of magical power. Yggdrasil had grown so long. If he were to evaluate Yggdrasil with a relic level, Wu Ming estimated that it would be at least an A++ relic. Wu Ming cut the branch between the arm and the tree. The arm turned into a silver-white holy spear in a flash of light. Yggdrasil had some white mysterious runes all over the body of the spear. The tip of the spear became even brighter. After Wu Ming performed a set of spear skills, he put the spear behind his back and looked up at the sky. Caw-caw. A bird-shaped demonic beast with a fleshy crown on its head was circling in the sky, making a strange sound from time to time. Have you, rascal? I'm in a good mood today and wanted to let you go. I didn't expect you to have designs on me. Wu Ming stuck out his tongue and licked the corner of his mouth. His pupils vaguely looked like red vertical slits. Caw-caw. The demonic beast seemed to have heard what Wu Ming said. It circled in the sky a few times, and then swooped down towards Wu Ming. Great, I'll use you as a sacrifice today. Wu Ming's expression became unruly. When the bird-shaped demonic beast was close to Wu Ming, Wu Ming flew up and stabbed the holy spear in his hand like a poisonous snake. Ka. The bird-shaped demonic beast circled in the sky and kept swinging its body. Wu Ming stabbed the holy spear into the back of the bird-shaped demonic beast and grinned. Ka. The bird-shaped demonic beast swung its body and flew away. On the main road not far from Connaught, a group of soldiers was hurrying along. The soldiers surrounded a carriage in the middle, as if protecting the important person in the carriage. A person who looked like a captain stood in front of the carriage and said to the carriage, "Your Highness, we will reach Connaught in half a day." "Is that so? Can we still speed up?" An extremely charming voice came from the carriage. "Your Highness, the soldiers have sped up their march according to your instructions, and are nearing Connaught half a month in advance. The soldiers are already exhausted. Please allow me to request for a temporary stop to rest," the captain pleaded. "All right, then let the soldiers rest for a while. Anyway, this little bit of time won't make a difference." The charming voice in the carriage sounded again. "Yes, Your Highness." The captain obeyed. Thus, the entire group rested on the empty ground beside the main road. Not long after, a series of strange roars were heard. Caw caw caw. It was a flying demonic beast with two fleshy crowns on its head. It stopped roaring as if it was running away from something. Looking at its body, one of its wings was broken, and there were some bloodstains on it. It could only fly less than 3 meters above the ground. A demonic beast is attacking. Protect the princess. The soldiers stood up one after another, and held the weapons in their hands. However, their trembling hands were not complimentary. After all, most soldiers would not be able to return from a demonic beast of this level. After all, the king did not expect there to be a demonic beast of this level in Ireland. Powerful demonic beasts would not live on the plains where humans lived. Weak demonic beasts were basically dealt with by the king's men or heroes. This demonic beast that was neither powerful nor weak was obviously not native to Ireland. It should have just arrived in Connaught not long ago. Caw caw. The demonic beast's eyes turned red. It could not understand why such weak humans dared to block its path. If it was not for that terrifying fellow behind it, it would definitely eat all the humans here. The bird-type demonic beast flew in a straight line, and took away all the humans along the way. It forced its way into the middle of the army, and seemed to be going straight through the group. Coincidentally, the carriage of the princess, who was being protected by everyone, was right in the middle of the group. As there were too many people around the carriage could not move at all. Just like that, when the bird-type demonic beast rushed to the front of the carriage, it flapped its intact wings and the entire carriage flew away in pieces. "Your Highness!" The surrounding soldiers shouted in panic. However, I was careless and let that demonic beast hold me back for a while. Since you have designs on me, don't even think about running away today. The arrogant voice of a young man was heard. "Let's end this. Yggdrasil. The bird-type demonic beast suddenly froze and a patch of green appeared on its body. Puff! The demonic beast's body shattered and a towering tree soared into the sky. On the giant tree, the young man hugged the princess. The princess looked at the slightly arrogant young man in a daze, and could not regain her senses for a long time. Chapter 6. My name is Maeve Federic, the Princess of Ireland. I am the most beloved princess of my father, Achu Federic. Since I was young, I have heard people saying that I am unruly. But I am talented. So what if I am unruly? If I become the queen of this country, I will definitely lead this country to prosperity and end this internal division. Now that the country is in an unstable state, my father decided to choose a few of his daughters from the 6 of us to marry lords who can stabilize the country. Ah, my pitiful father, do you really think that this method of marriage will work? To these nobles who only pay lip service, this is like giving them a windfall. Besides, I don't want to marry those lords who are old enough to be my grandfather. Thus, when I was married off by my father, I used my intelligence to escape. I returned to the royal palace to meet my father. My father knows my temper and my intelligence. Thus he sent my other sister to marry that noble. My father thought that if she were to marry elsewhere, it would be the same result. In addition, my father dotes on me. In the end, my father decided to bestow me a territory, Connaught. He also allowed me to find my own husband. That is great. This way, I will be the queen of Connaught. I believe that under my wise leadership, the people of my territory will be happier. Also, I don't want to find my own husband. Those stinky men must be coveting my beauty. I must find a great hero who will not covet my beauty to be my husband. Oh right, I heard that a young hero has emerged in the Connaught region. His name is Sira. It is said that the hero wields a silver holy spear. When everyone was in despair, he killed the magical beast that was ravaging Connaught. No one could subdue it. Ah, how brave. I heard from others that he has black hair and black eyes. He has an imposing appearance and has a temperament that no ordinary person can have. When he fights, he is unruly. It is said that his eyes can turn into the vertical pupils of a wild beast. He is like a berserk dragon that bites his opponent. Ah, what a beautiful, brave, and violent hero. It must be because the heavens couldn't stand the afternoon anymore, so they sent you to save me. You must be the husband that the heavens chose for me, Maeve. Ah, my adorable little Sai, I'll be right there, right there, right there. You must wait for me in Connaught, right? Since I am afraid that my little Sai will leave Connaught. Then I have to speed up. I have to reach there in at least 10 days. I have decided. I will speed up the marching speed of the guards. Speed up according to the plan. We will only reach Connaught after a month. After half a month, I have only just arrived near the center of Connaught. Sai, these soldiers are really useless. In the future, I must build a strong army myself. Finally, I could see little Sai. I couldn't wait any longer. Just as I was about to give the order to speed up the march, the captain of the guards came to ask me to let the troops rest. Sai, that guard captain actually asked the army to rest. Ah, do you know that you are delaying my time to see little Sai? We have rested many times along the way. In the end, I thought about it and decided to let it go. Seeing that they had escorted me along the way, I will let them rest for a while. After all, I am also a little nervous now, little Sai. Suddenly, the soldiers outside started to panic. Ah, is there a magical beast attacking outside? How could it be? There shouldn't be any magical beasts of this level within the borders of our country. These magical beasts that are neither too strong nor too weak should have been wiped out. I can feel that the magical beasts are getting closer and closer to me. Am I going to die? I can't accept this. I haven't seen you yet, my little Sai. The carriage was smashed apart. Strange. Why didn't I feel any pain? Due to fear, I closed my eyes. However, I could still feel that I was saved by someone. I could feel the warmth of the person who saved me. In a moment of carelessness, I actually allowed that male magical beast to entangle me for a while. You two, husband and wife, can forget about escaping today. Let's end this. Yggdrasil, Yggdrasil. Up, that voice was so unruly. I opened my eyes that I had closed because I was afraid. What did I see? A young man with a slightly unruly expression. He held a silver-white spear in one hand and hugged me in the other. Standing on a huge tree, the sun shone on his face. Ah, this is such a sacred scene. He must be Sira. As expected, you are the husband that the heavens have arranged for me. My little Sai. Chapter 7. 3 months had passed since Wu Ming rescued my food due to an accident. After Wu Ming was carried back to the nest by the previous magical beast, Wu Ming found that there was another magical beast in the nest. It seemed to be a male and a female. The male magical beast probably wanted to join forces with the female magical beast to deal with Wu Ming. Unfortunately, they were not strong enough. Wu Ming was entangled with the male magical beast for a while, and the female magical beast escaped with injuries. When Wu Ming learned that the girl he saved was Maeve, Wu Ming was stunned. That's right, Wu Ming really didn't expect Maeve to come back so quickly. After knowing the reason why she sped up because she wanted to see the legendary hero Sarence, Wu Ming felt helpless. To be honest, Wu Ming could not see that the arrogant genius girl he saved was the future Queen Maeve. By the way, it was not that Maeve did not have the ability to fight, but her ability was too weak. In addition, the situation was urgent at that time, and Maeve was in a state of fantasy, so Wu Ming saved the damsel in distress. Cough cough. To be honest, the hero saving the damsel in distress was indeed a cliché, but its effect was often effective on girls. Wu Ming was sitting on a boulder outside the city, meditating with his eyes closed. A girl was sitting next to him, staring at him intently, until the veins on Wu Ming's head popped out. The girl was the current lord of Connaught, Maeve. In the end, Wu Ming sighed. "Sigh, my lord, what are you doing?" Wu Ming opened his eyes and turned to look at Maeve. Maeve smiled and said, "I'm just observing the daily practice of my savior and husband." That's right, since Wu Ming accidentally saved Maeve, the idea of a heavenly husband had been deeply ingrained in Maeve's heart. God knows what this self-conscious girl was thinking. Wu Ming rubbed his forehead helplessly. He had to admit that Mai Fu was very beautiful and charming. As for her personality, from what Wu Ming had observed, Mai Fu had yet to grow into the arrogant Queen Mai Fu who thought that all men would be addicted to her pomegranate dress. Right now, Maeve was just a rebellious and self-conscious little princess. In short, in summary, Wu Ming has no feelings for Mai Fu. How should I put it? Wu Ming was the dragon of origins, but he also had the lust of a dragon. However, Wu Ming's lust was temporarily suppressed by his other natures, resulting in Wu Ming's temporary sexual apathy. In addition, Wu Ming felt that Maeve was more like a naughty sister than a wife. With Wu Ming's help, Maeve had consolidated her political power in Connaught in the past 3 months. Because of Wu Ming's concern, Maeve recognized this heavenly husband even more. "Maeve, what's wrong, little Sai? You're a smart person, you should know what I'm thinking." "Little Sai, what are you talking about? It's so complicated, I don't understand." Then there was a moment of silence. Wu Ming sighed. "Maeve, I will be leaving this place soon." Maeve's beautiful face that maintained a smile froze for a moment, and her pupils dilated. "I'm a traveler. The reason why I settled down in Connaught was to rest. Now I have a new goal, so I'm preparing to leave." "Is that so? That's great, but I won't let you go. I will use all my means to stop you." Wu Ming was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Maeve to be so direct. "Then I'll help you with something. How about letting me go?" Maeve smiled as if she heard what she wanted. "Deal." 7 days later, Wu Ming received the news that Connaught had been humiliated by borrowing the Ulster Divine Bull, and was preparing to attack Ulster. Wu Ming laughed bitterly. "Maeve, so that's what you're planning?" This reminded Wu Ming of the long march to steal the bull. In the original novel, Maeve and her chosen husband were competing to see who was wealthier. She wanted to borrow the brown divine bull from the Ulster region. However, because the messenger was drunk and arrogant, he said that he would attack Ulster if he didn't borrow it. This made Cooley, who wanted to borrow the bull, back out. In the end, the war between Connaught and Ulster began. But that was many years later. With Maeve's current reputation and the strength of her soldiers, it was impossible for her to attack Ulster. It was likely that she would lose again and surrender. Therefore, Wu Ming guessed that Maeve would come back to him for help. After winning this war, Wu Ming could leave. "Sir Wu Ming, the Overlord is looking for you." A soldier came to Wu Ming's door and said, "As expected." "Got it. I'll go over right now." With that, Wu Ming opened the door and walked towards Maeve's meeting hall. When he reached the meeting hall, Wu Ming found that there was no one inside or outside the door. Just as Wu Ming was puzzled, he sensed Maeve's presence. Maeve slowly walked to the main seat in the meeting hall. Wu Ming did not stand on ceremony and sat beside Maeve. "I already know the general situation. But with the military strength of Connaught now, it's impossible to compare with the powerful Ulster. If you want me to lead the Connaught soldiers to attack, I think it's better to forget about it." Wu Ming went straight to the point without hesitation. "Don't worry, little Sai. I definitely won't fight an unprepared war. Do you remember the blood I asked you for the other day?" Wu Ming recalled the day when Wu Ming and Maeve reached an agreement. Maeve wanted Wu Ming to provide some essence blood. Wu Ming was not worried that Maeve would use some strange magic to control him. Maeve would not do that. She would not be Maeve if she did. "Oh, what's the use of the blood?" Wu Ming asked. "Of course it's useful. I have a secret technique that can use a man's essence blood and my presence to quickly produce and nurture powerful warriors. Of course, although it's called production, it's actually the cyborgs produced through my hands and your essence blood. The strength of the cyborgs depends on the strength of the person who provides the essence blood. Therefore, I believe that with the soldiers produced from Little Sai's blood and my magic, our soldiers will definitely be invincible, Maeve said with a smile. Cyborgs. Wu Ming was not against the cyborgs. He was just a little repulsed. Then when will the war begin? 7 days later. Maeve said. I'm going out to train in the next few days. I'll be there on time. After that, Wu Ming got up and walked out of the door. Okay, Little Sai, Maeve said with a grin. If Wu Ming remembered correctly, after this war, it would be the time of Maeve's death. It was also a symbol of Ireland's weakness at this moment. However, because of Wu Ming, the long march to take the bull had been brought forward. Although it was not long, it was not short either. The outcome was still uncertain. Whether Cuchulainn would return from his studies, whether the King of Ulster would change, whether Fergus would still defect to Connaught, these were all unknown. However, Wu Ming was looking forward to it. His arrogant face appeared on his face again. Maeve smiled. She could see Wu Ming's arrogant face clearly from her seat. Ah, my Little Sai, you're amazing. Chapter 8. 3 days later, Wu Ming saw the cyborg soldiers. Because they were cyborgs born from Wu Ming's blood, these cyborgs were more or less similar to Wu Ming in terms of appearance and temperament. Also because they were Wu Ming, the lifespan of these soldiers was much longer than that of ordinary cyborgs. Because Wu Ming and Maeve were leading the troops together, Wu Ming was asked by Maeve to say some motivational words in front of the soldiers. Wu Ming knew that he was not cut out for that, so he simply said a few words and left. Just like that, for days passed quickly. The day of war had arrived. The place where the two armies first fought was a plain. In the past, it was full of vitality, but today, it was gloomy because of the murderous aura. All troops attack. With the command of both commanders, the soldiers of Connaught and Ulster began to charge. Wu Ming led the soldiers of Connaught. He charged at the front, while Maeve commanded from the rear. Sure enough, as soon as the war began, the Ulster army retreated in defeat. They could not resist the cyborgs of the Connaught army and Wu Ming who led the charge. Sure enough, Cuchulainn hasn't returned yet. Teasy. What a bummer. Wu Ming stood on the battlefield, watching the Connaught army constantly encroach on the Ulster army. The Ulster army retreated, which made Wu Ming become arrogant again. His pupils turned into a dragon, and he looked very excited. Wu Ming called this state dragonization. Wu Ming had already known about his change, but he did not deliberately suppress it. When Wu Ming awakened his birth memories, he already knew that during the period when he was not fully grown, he would develop a series of negative effects similar to that of a dragon. These negative effects would constantly be triggered. The only way was to adapt to these effects and control them. Forcibly suppressing them would only have the opposite effect. Fortunately, these negative effects would only appear once at a time. After they appeared, the next negative effect would only appear once he had completely adapted to and controlled them. By the way, the obscenity mentioned before was temporarily suppressed because of this. Wu Ming returned to Maeve's side. Wu Ming no longer needed to lead the army. Firstly, the Connaught army that was pursuing the Ulster army would be ordered to retreat by Maeve soon after the pursuit. Secondly, Wu Ming did not have a strong leader or soldiers. Wu Ming's dragonization was completely inspired by the war and the excitement of being able to fight against enemy heroes. Now that the excitement was gone, Wu Ming returned to his usual state. Maeve, from the looks of it, Connaught will be victorious very soon, Wu Ming said calmly. That's not necessarily the case. Little Sai, the enemy's powerful hero hasn't appeared yet. Don't underestimate them. Maeve stood on the chariot and smiled at Wu Ming who was beside her. Is that so? I'm looking forward to it. Let's leave it at that for today. Messenger, pass down the order to withdraw the troops for the time being. Don't pursue. Maeve said to the messenger beside the chariot. Yes, Your Majesty. After saying that, he walked away. Your Majesty? You have such a bad taste, Maeve. Wu Ming heard it and smiled helplessly. What's wrong? Is it strange that I'm a queen? I'm the Queen of Connaught, Maeve said. It's fine, it's fine. It suits you, Queen Maeve. Wu Ming said with a smile. Let's go. Understood. Just like that, the first day of the war ended. Connaught marched towards Ulster with overwhelming strength. In the next 7 days, Ulster retreated in defeat. When they were about to lose half of their land, the hero named Cuchulainn returned from his training in the Country of Shadows. He said that he wanted to have a good fight with his senior, Sira, in the war. When Wu Ming heard the news, he instantly became excited and almost dragonized. Wu Ming was very excited. He was about to fight with the half-human, half-god hero of the Celtic people, the son of the sun god Ruger, the son of light Cuchulainn. Cuchulainn's original name was Sertant. When he was young, he killed the guard dog of the wealthy merchant, Coden, with his bare hands. He said, "If this dog has offspring, I will be responsible for raising it and train it to be an equally powerful and loyal guard dog. Until then, I will protect you." Therefore, Sertant was called Coden's fierce dog, or Cuchulainn. When Cuchulainn was young, he entered the demonic realm and was recognized by the queen of the demonic realm, Skaha. Skaha imparted all her knowledge and martial arts to Cuchulainn, and he successfully walked out of the demonic realm. He shone brightly in the long march of the bull, and was remembered by later generations. Wu Ming was not worried that Skaha would not teach Cuchulainn well after getting the chance to kill him. Skaha was not that kind of person. The longer a person lived, the more easygoing they would be. Skaha was the same, but she was also a warrior, and naturally would not give up on cultivating and teaching good seedlings. Therefore, Wu Ming was looking forward to the battle with Cuchulainn. Soon the second day arrived. Because they were deep in Ulster, the marching speed of the Connaught army was now very slow. One side was ambushed by the enemy, and Wu Ming had already retreated to the rear to protect Maeve. Because there was no hero comparable to Wu Ming did not deliberately ask to fight. Of course, this was also Maeve's arrangement. Now Cuchulainn was back. He was very powerful and often harassed the Connaught army, making their marching speed ridiculously slow. Therefore, when Wu Ming wanted to fight, Maeve decided to send Wu Ming to deal with Cuchulainn because of the battle situation. Then Maeve decided to go to the front line with Wu Ming. First, to boost morale, and second, to prevent Fergus of the Ulster army from sneaking into the rear to kill Maeve. Wu Ming retreated to the rear for this reason. Fergus of the Ulster army also understood this, and stayed by the side of the King of Ulster to protect him. Maeve followed to the front line, and it was convenient for Wu Ming to protect her. Soon Wu Ming and Maeve arrived at the front line. They received a letter of challenge from Cuchulainn to a one-on-one fight with Wu Ming. After receiving the letter of challenge and persuading Maeve, Wu Ming came to the place where he and Cuchulainn had agreed to fight. It was a relatively wide grassland near the battlefield. Wu Ming came to the back and saw Cuchulainn standing on the grassland, looking in his direction. Wu Ming also looked at him. Then, in the next moment, the two figures disappeared at the same time. Two figures appeared in the middle of the grassland, their spears touching each other. Wu Ming's face was full of excitement. His pupils became vertical, and it was obvious that he had activated dragon form. On the opposite side, Cuchulainn also bared his teeth and grinned, looking ecstatic. The two of them had never met before, but as if their hearts were linked, they laughed. "You must be Sira. You must be Cuchulainn." Chapter 9. Ever since Wu Ming left Connaught, he first hid his identity and traveled to Ulster and Leinster. During this time, he also obtained some treasures for various reasons. Tools and objects obtained from fighting heroes, treasures, weapons, jewelry, gold coins, etc. When he obtained too many of these treasures, Wu Ming suddenly had an idea. He used some of the quality items to refine a space-type Lune rune for himself. Wu Ming spent 7 days to complete the rune. Wu Ming fixed the rune on the wall of his hand and placed all the treasures, tools, jewelry, gold coins, weapons, including Wu Ming's Spear of the World Tree, into the rune. If the rune was damaged or disappeared due to external forces, the items within the rune would all scatter out. It wouldn't cause the items to disappear along with the rune. Now Wu Ming was doing his final inspection in Leinster. Wu Ming stood on a cliff by the shore and looked into the distance. As expected, The historical stories recorded in my previous world don't completely match the ones in this world, Wu Ming said calmly. Actually, that wasn't the case. Due to the long history, the accuracy of the historical records was greatly reduced. In addition to various modifications in later generations, that was why Wu Ming encountered heroes in historical myths and legends that didn't match the ones recorded in history books. Wu Ming decided to go to Great Headland Island to take a look. Of course, this was just a simple trip to see the country that King Arthur had once ruled. When Wu Ming went on a punitive expedition against a demonic beast, he obtained an old set of armor in its cave. This armor was a full bodysuit, including the head. Although this armor was old, it was still very sturdy. After Wu Ming inquired about it, he learned about the origin of this armor from an old man in a village. King Arthur's gift ***********. This was found by the old man from the inner collar of the armor. The front part meant King Arthur's gift, but the back part was too worn out to be seen. The old man said that this set of armor was brought by his grandfather from Great Britain. He originally wanted to sell it to a blacksmith in the big city, but who would have thought that the old man's grandfather would never return? When he heard that this set of armor was found in the cave of the magical beast that Wu Ming had defeated, the old man didn't say anything and just kept sighing. The old man gestured for Wu Ming to take this thing away, as if to the old man, it was a disaster. What interested Wu Ming more was that this set of armor could be worn by Wu Ming and fit him perfectly. Wu Ming, after cleaning the armor, put it on. Because of this, Wu Ming decided to go on a trip to Great Headland Island. Because it was a long time ago, the technology wasn't advanced. Wu Ming found a ship that could go to Great Headland Island a few days later. After Wu Ming paid some gold coins, the captain said that there was no problem at all. After a long journey that took half a month, Wu Ming finally set foot on Great Headland Island. His current location was the southernmost part of Great Headland Island, Wales. Because most of the west side of Great Headland Island was mountainous, Wu Ming's ship was headed to the southern part of England where there were more plains and more cities. Coincidentally, the legendary capital of King Arthur, Camelot, was in the southwest of Wales, not far from where Wu Ming landed. At night, Wu Ming arrived at the palace. Hearing that this was a palace that was transformed from King Arthur's palace, Wu Ming wanted to enter the palace library to see if there was any reliable information. As soon as he entered the palace, Wu Ming realized that there were many powerful knights. Wu Ming could defeat them, but Wu Ming would have to put in some effort. Because of Skaha, Wu Ming's various skills could be said to be at a higher level. Of course, in the eyes of those experts, Wu Ming was just showing off his slight skill in front of an expert. Therefore, Wu Ming's stealth skill came in handy here. Wu Ming seriously suspected that if he turned into a heroic spirit, he might be able to adapt to all 7 ordinary classes. As for those legendary adjudicators and avengers, Wu Ming didn't want to think about them. Outside the study, Wu Ming drew a few runes. After a wave of spatial fluctuations, Wu Ming entered the study. I have to say the royal library is really big. Wu Ming specifically went to look for books that looked particularly old. Wu Ming summoned the light loon, and a ball of light appeared beside him. Wu Ming used the light of the ball of light to read the books. 7 days later, Wu Ming put down the book in his hand and let out a long sigh. Phew. Sure enough, reading is the most enjoyable. Wu Ming read for 7 days in a row. When he was hungry, he would take out the prepared food from the spatial runes. As a warrior, reading books was not tiring. Besides, as someone who was addicted to the sea of books, he wouldn't feel tired. It's almost time to go. I've almost finished reading all the information I wanted. Wu Ming only read about some things that happened after King Arthur was destroyed. Wu Ming found that in general, the King Arthur of this world was similar to the King Arthur that he knew. However, the King Arthur of this world had an additional knight that seemed unimportant, but was actually very important. Before King Arthur became king, he was asked by the previous king, King Uther, to assist King Arthur together with Mage Merlin. After King Arthur became the queen, he began to assist King Arthur. He was a knight and a mage. He often discussed the mysteries of spells with Wizard Merlin, and he often fought valiantly on the battlefield to help King Arthur devise strategies. He had a good relationship with all the knights, especially the rebellious knight Mordred. After the kingdom was stabilized, He left Camelot and began a new round of travel. Although in this world, Queen Guinevere did not fall in love with the first knight Lancelot, Lancelot still fell in love with the queen. When he was discovered, he ran away. This was the beginning of the end of King Arthur. Later, under the pressure of the people, King Arthur went to France to take Lancelot in. The rebellious knight Mordred took advantage of this opportunity to rebel. In the end, King Arthur was severely injured in the Battle of Camelot. Strangely, Wu Ming found the composition of a magic circle in an ancient book. It was written in the first Lune rune. What is going on? Why is there a Lune rune? Wu Ming could not figure it out. In the end, Wu Ming laid out the pattern of a magic circle. I happen to have the tools that make up the magic circle. Things are getting weirder and weirder. But let's see what's going on. Wu Ming injected his mana into the circle. The circle was activated, and a white light enveloped Wu Ming. Wu Ming did not even have time to react before he disappeared along with the circle. All that was left was a book that slowly turned to dust in the wind. Chapter 10. When Wu Ming found himself wrapped in a magic array, he knew that this was a high-level teleportation array. Then Wu Ming ran the magic in his body to wrap his whole body. Wu Ming did not notice that there was a faint light spot on his armor. Why do I feel like I've been tricked by myself? For a moment, Wu Ming's eyes lit up, and Wu Ming closed his eyes. The feeling of stepping on solid ground came, and after confirming that he had arrived at the teleportation location, Wu Ming opened his eyes. Because of the sudden teleportation, Wu Ming hurriedly put on the helmet of the armor. There were two blade-like protrusions on both sides of the top of the helmet, extending backward, and the shape was slightly like a dragon's horn. The face was sealed, and only the eyes of the armor revealed a thin slit that did not affect the vision. Wu Ming opened his eyes. He was now in a forest, and there were two people standing in front of him, one old and one young, one tall and one short. The former was tall, with a slight king's temperament, and his body looked very strong, but Wu Ming still found that the old man's breath was not enough, and it was obvious that he would not live for long. The latter was wearing a white robe, holding a strange staff, and looked handsome, but his face was like a circle in Wu Ming's eyes. Is this the legendary dragon Mage Merlin? The old man obviously decided to find it strange. He summoned a dragon, so why did a man come out? Your Royal Highness King Yusef, there is no doubt that this is the legendary dragon, I can assure you, said the mage named Merlin. Wu Ming was wearing full body armor, and his head was covered, so his face could not be seen, but Wu Ming's heart was exploding at the moment. What is this situation? King Yusef. Merlin. Wu Ming shouted in his heart. King Yusef thought for a moment, and took a rectangular wooden box from his back. He opened the wooden box, presented it in front of Wu Ming, and said, Legendary dragon, I am willing to use this celestial iron sword to ask you to protect Britain before the new king grows up. Please forgive my offense and agree to my request. Wu Ming froze for a moment, looked at the celestial iron sword in the center of the wooden box, and was instantly embarrassed. What kind of sword is this? This is a big iron block that looks like a sword. Of course, the magic contained in this big iron block was extremely amazing. Wu Ming thought for a moment and did not say a word. Wu Ming guessed that the legendary dragon they were talking about was probably the dragon, but Wu Ming was not sure, so he denied his identity. However, Wizard Merlin pointed to a scroll on the ground and said, This scroll is connected to another scroll, the legendary dragon summoning scroll. It has the dried blood of the legendary dragon, so it must summon the legendary dragon. Merlin's meaning made Wu Ming have to bite the bullet. Let's put this matter aside for now. Where is this place? Wu Ming changed the subject. This is the forest on the outskirts of Camelot, the capital of Britain. Sure enough, that scroll sent me to the past. Wu Ming thought in his heart. Your Highness King Yusef, I can't guarantee that I can completely protect Britain, but I can promise that I will do my best to protect Britain from harm. What do you think? Wu Ming thought for a moment. Now that he was here, he had to find a place to stay. He could not just wander around aimlessly. In that case, I will thank the legendary dragon on behalf of my British people. In this way, Wu Ming was inexplicably brought back to Camelot by old Yosef and Merlin. 10 years had passed. 10 years ago, Wu Ming joined the Knights of Camelot as a knight who trained alone in the mountains. He also became King Yusef's personal guard, and was responsible for some matters that the knights could not handle, such as the attack of powerful magical beasts or the delay of the beheading operation when the enemy invaded. As for Wizard Merlin, Wu Ming became friends with him. Moreover, Wu Ming always felt that the mage named Merlin, who was not old at all, knew something. He was always smiling all day long. Sometimes, Wu Ming would always punch Merlin in the face for no reason. Wu Ming did not know how many times he had slapped him in the face. Wu Ming did not want the Sky Iron Sword, but King Yusef insisted on giving it to Wu Ming. Wu Ming had no choice but to accept it. Due to his identity as a knight, Wu Ming's spear was not very suitable for him to use. Thus, he decided to forge this outer sky mysterious iron sword into a powerful sword. When talking about the sword, it was natural to talk about the armor. After talking about the armor, Wu Ming was surprised to find that the armor on his body had completely changed after he was teleported. It became silver and shiny, completely unlike the shabby gray armor before. Wu Ming carefully checked it. In addition to becoming brand new, the unclear text in the collar had disappeared. Speaking of which, Wu Ming wanted to see what was erased later. Because Wu Ming wore a bright white armor with a dragon-like helmet, and Wu Ming looked like a violent silver dragon in battle. Wu Ming was called the British Silver Dragon by the people. Because Merlin thought that Wu Ming was not suitable for this era, Merlin gave Wu Ming a name that was biased towards this era, Villo. British Silver Dragon Villo. For the problem of the name, Wu Ming was already too tired to complain. Silver Dragon. Why do the people I meet always like to give me strange names? Wu Ming said helplessly. To be honest, the two words Silver Dragon always gave him a strange feeling. During this period, Wu Ming learned about the plan of King Yusef and Merlin. Because the Roman Empire was invaded by foreign enemies, it was showing signs of decline and division. The British Isles, which were once the territory of the Roman Empire, fell into a state of internal strife. A few years ago, King Yusef defeated King Fudikin. King Yusef knew that he would not live for long, so he set up a foreshadowing early. He placed his hopes on the next generation of king, and his royal magician Merlin planned to create a new king who was born above mortals. They combined the blood of the British king, the ideology of Britain as the Red Dragon, and the noble female blood to perfectly integrate the two to create a mother fetus. In this way, the legendary King Arthur, Artoria Pendragon, was quietly born. He entrusted Artoria to a trusted noble knight, and let the noble knight raise King Yusef's child, which was King Arthur. During this period, Merlin would teach King Arthur all kinds of knowledge and fighting abilities to become a king in the dream. Finally, when King Yusef died, it was the time for the new king, King Arthur, to lead the people. Wu Ming's character was to train and help King Arthur until King Arthur became a real king and no longer needed him. This was undoubtedly inconsistent with the historical story that Wu Ming learned. What made Wu Ming speechless was that the King of Knights, King Arthur, was actually a woman. This made Wu Ming, who had just learned about the plan, shocked. In the beginning, Wu Ming did not care about King Arthur. After a while, Wu Ming met King Arthur in the forest and showed his superb skills. From then on, Wu Ming had another brother-sister. Because Merlin was responsible for teaching King Arthur the ability to fight and be a king, therefore, Wu Ming basically had nothing to do except protect Britain when there was war, or when there was an invasion of magical beasts. For a pure girl, Wu Ming decided that it was necessary for him to accompany King Arthur more, and let him enjoy the joy of being a girl before he became a king. Chapter 11. In a forest, a young man-girl, with a slightly neutral appearance, was training his thin and small body in the forest. Leah, the teenager girl, stumbled and almost fell. "Please don't call me that, Vi," the teenager girl said with a slightly red face. Leah, you've grown up. The little girl who used to follow me and call me brother has grown up." Wu Ming appeared behind Leah with a strange voice. Leah looked at Wu Ming angrily. All right. I haven't taken you out to play for a long time. I've specially asked for leave to accompany you today. Wu Ming said with a smile. Oh. Leah did not say anything. She looked at Wu Ming's eyes, wanting to say something but hesitated. What's wrong, Leah? My Leah is not the kind of person who is indecisive. Leah's face turned slightly red again because of the words my. Vi, I want to continue training today, so let's postpone the trip for now. Leah said with a slight nervousness. Understood. Come back early tonight. Merlin and I have something to tell you. Wu Ming touched Leah's head again. To be honest, he loved that blonde hair so much that he could not put it down. Got it. Also, don't touch my head. Leah said with a red face. Ever since Leah was chosen by the British Silver Dragon, Leah moved out of her original home and lived in Wiz's house. Of course, this was Wu Ming's request. To put it nicely, it was to nurture an excellent knight. After saying goodbye to Leah, Wu Ming began to move northwest of Camelor. Finally, he walked to a mountain wall. Wu Ming raised his hand and drew a few runes in the air. The mountain wall in front of him rippled and revealed the entrance of a cave. Wu Ming walked in without hesitation. I wonder how the sword is being forged. Is Merlin reliable? Wu Ming said as he walked. I'm so sad, Vi. Are you that pessimistic? A charming male voice was heard. Because it was dark in the cave, the person's face could not be seen clearly. My fists are thirsty. Wu Ming raised his armored arm. Wait. Don't slap my face for no reason. The man's voice was flustered and panicked. I'm kidding. Why are you so nervous, Merlin? Wu Ming said with a smile and lowered his fist. You mischievous fellow. Do you think I won't tell Leah your true colors? A young man wearing a white robe and a wooden staff walked out of the shadows. This person was the great wizard Merlin who had summoned Wu Ming 10 years ago. She trusts me more than you, Mage Merlin. Wu Ming kept walking into the cave. Forget it. You go take a look at the sword first. It's a crucial moment. Wu Ming and Merlin walked to the end of the cave. What greeted their eyes was a tall earthen furnace. There was a circular opening in the middle of the furnace, and one could see the interior of the furnace from the outside. Golden flames were burning in the furnace, and a bright silver sword was floating above the flames. Because it was burning, the bright silver sword was still moving like a sword-shaped liquid metal. Wu Ming bit his middle finger and immediately extended his hand into the furnace, placing his finger on the sword. Golden blood flowed onto the sword like water, wheezing and wheezing. After absorbing Wu Ming's blood, the sword shone even more brightly. The excess blood flowed from the sword into the flames, causing the flames to burn even more vigorously. Even Merlin, who was watching from afar, felt a pang of pain. I really don't know what you're thinking. If you want to use blood, just use it. Why use so much? Merlin shuddered. You still have the nerve to say that. You say that blood is a rare treasure, and that you add some to Leah's food every time you cook. It's for her after all. That's fine, but you want to use my blood to grow vegetables? Do you know how much blood I've lost? You despicable gardener. Wu Ming glared at Merlin. Merlin did not mind and said with a smile. Oh, isn't this all for Britain? Ha ha ha. Tsh. I can't be bothered with you. Wu Ming focused on letting out the blood. After a while, Wu Ming's face turned pale, and his middle finger stopped bleeding. Wu Ming withdrew his hand and looked at the sword in the furnace quietly. Merlin did the same, and looked at the sword in the furnace quietly. Suddenly, the flames in the furnace began to burn fiercely, and the sword in the furnace began to absorb the flames wildly. Whoosh! The flames burned fiercely. After a while, the flames were completely absorbed by the sword in the furnace. The originally bright silver sword became even more dazzling. The corners of Wu Ming's mouth curled up, and he stretched out his hand. The sword floated into Wu Ming's hand by itself. Wu Ming looked at the sword that was connected to his blood and could not help but praise. As expected of the sacred sword of Meteor. Congratulations, Wu Ming, Merlin said from the side. And this time he used Wu Ming's real name. This is all thanks to you, Merlin. I express my gratitude to you here. Wu Ming bowed to Merlin. Ha ha. I didn't expect that there would be a day when you would bow to me. Ha ha. Merlin seemed to have seen something incredible, and he laughed while holding his stomach. By the way, I'm going to retreat for a while. During this time, I'll leave Britain and Leah to you. Wu Ming did not care about Merlin's laughter and said calmly, "He decided to start turning this sword into his own noble artifact now." "Ah. It's so sudden." "I have no problem, but it's hard to explain to Lia." Merlin also stopped laughing, and now was the time to talk business. "I'll tell Lia to go home early today, and then you can tell her that I'm going out to fight monsters. Also, today is the time to tell Lia about her background. Ah, I do the bad things and the good things always come to you. It can't be helped, I'm just a mage." Merlin laughed evilly. "Don't give me that. You're the British sword saint. Others may not know about it, but I do." Wu Ming looked at Merlin helplessly. Although Wu Ming practiced his spear skills every day, he basically did not use a spear in the past 10 years, and had been using mass-produced knights. Although Wu Ming and Skahar majored in spear skills, Skahar was also a master of other weapons. There was once when Merlin saw Wu Ming practicing his swordsmanship, and gave him some pointers. Unexpectedly, after being stunned for a moment, Wu Ming suddenly swung his sword at Merlin, and scared him so much that he blocked it with his staff. Only then did Wu Ming realize that Merlin's swordsmanship was very strong. After that, Wu Ming half-jokingly called Merlin the British sword saint. "Ah. Don't talk nonsense, I'm not worthy of being called the British sword saint." Merlin said that he could not afford to be called the British sword saint, but he still showed a proud smile on his face. All right, stop talking nonsense. Let's go, and remember to seal the entrance of the cave when we reach it." Wu Ming waved his hand, indicating that he wanted to go into seclusion there. "Come out as soon as possible. King Yusef can't hold on for much longer. I'll tell Lia about her background tonight." After saying that, Merlin turned around and left. Phew. Wu Ming took a deep breath and sat in front of the furnace with his back against it. Although the flames in the furnace had disappeared, the residual heat was still there. With Wu Ming's blood as the fuel, the residual heat of the flames could last for a long time. At this point, Wu Ming began to upgrade the sword's noble phantasm. Wu Ming had a premonition that the relic would be upgraded very quickly this time. Chapter 12. Wu Ming and Lia played crazily for the whole day, forgetting the time. When they came back to their senses, it was already sunset. "Let's go, Lia. I'll personally cook today and make you a delicious meal." Wu Ming held Lia's hand and said with a smile, "Well, I'm looking forward to it, Vi." Lia smiled brightly, like a gorgeous lily. Wu Ming was stunned. It seems that Lia is really tired these days. It's been a long time since I saw Lia smile like this. After returning home, Wu Ming made a sumptuous dinner for Lia under Merlin's resentful gaze. After eating with Lia, Lia asked to practice her swordsmanship and went to the backyard of the house. Wu Ming asked Merlin as he cleaned up the dishes, "What's going on with King Yusef? Did he ask you to do this?" Although it was a question, Wu Ming used an affirmative tone. Merlin sat on the wooden chair in front of the dining table and said without changing his expression, "Yes. Of course King Yusef wanted it. When he knew that you had been in seclusion for nearly 3 months and had not come out, he decisively cut off the magic that I set up for him to maintain his life. He used the reason that since the legendary dragon could not protect my people and my land, then my descendants will protect them, to forcibly cut off the magic, and then he died suddenly." Merlin sighed. It was obvious that King Yusef wanted to do this from the beginning. If it were not for Wu Ming doing a good job these years, King Yusef would have cut off the magic that maintained his life earlier. Wu Ming put the washed dishes in the kitchen and sat opposite Merlin. "Since I have made a contract with him, then I have a certain responsibility for his death. I will be responsible for Lia's coronation." Although Wu Ming had lived in modern human society for more than 10 years, it did not mean that he had become like a human. As the great origin dragon, Wu Ming did not want to break his promise. Even if he broke his promise because of an accident, Wu Ming would try his best to make up for it. Not to mention that this was not breaking his promise. As expected of the legendary dragon, my dear friend Wu Ming. In fact, Merlin hated humans. Therefore, for Merlin, Wu Ming, whose bloodline was the origin dragon, was a very good friend. As for the reason why Merlin hated humans, Wu Ming did not know. If Merlin did not say it, he would not ask. As for why Merlin would help King Yusuf and teach King Arthur, Wu Ming did not know. When is the sword in the stone sword drawing ceremony? Wu Ming asked. 3 days later. Finally, the new king is going to ascend the throne. This country, in the end, still has to rely on themselves to save it. Wu Ming sighed. Strictly speaking, Wu Ming and Merlin were not citizens of this country. Merlin had the highest level of magician's clairvoyance, and he had long seen the destruction of King Arthur's dynasty. Wu Ming, on the other hand, was just a passerby. Wu Ming also knew that King Arthur's dynasty would be destroyed. Wu Ming wanted to stop this tragedy, but history had the power to correct it. Even if Britain was not destroyed in King Arthur's generation, it would be destroyed in the next generation. This generation would be the source of the destruction of the next generation. Wu Ming did not know if he would oppose Merlin in the future. First, Merlin was a trustworthy friend. Second, he was also a powerful wizard and swordsman. Based on these 2 points alone, Wu Ming did not want to fight with him. Merlin was the same. It was not easy to make a close friend. Who would want to fight with a sword? Time passed quickly. 3 days later, in the courtyard where the sword in the stone was located, the sword in the middle was covered by a red cloth. There was a sea of people here, and it was unusually crowded. Fortunately, the walls of the courtyard were net-shaped fences that did not obstruct the view. The courtyard was not small, and it could barely accommodate the knights who wanted the sword. Of course, there were people outside the fences. After all, the king's selection ceremony was very important. When everyone arrived, Merlin, who had been wearing the same clothes, appeared. He lifted the red cloth covering the sword in the stone, and the sword in the stone appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It was a very beautiful sword. Compared to a weapon, it was more like an ornament, a sword that the king did not need to fight. However, this sword was far from that simple. The sword was inserted into a square stone. Around the stone were written, "Whoever pulls out this sword and is born here is the king." The sword was also engraved with the inscription, "Only the king can take the sword in the stone." It meant that only the king can pull out the sword in the stone. As the British silver dragon who had the most children after King Yusuf, Wu Ming was the first to step forward and pull out the sword. Wu Ming knew that he could pull it out. After all, this sword was enchanted by Merlin. Wu Ming could still pull it out if he wanted to. Because it was just a formality, Wu Ming stepped forward and gently grasped the sword. He then let go and said with a smile, "Haha, it seems that I can't pull it out." The nobles were obviously relieved. Compared to the British silver dragon in front of them, they would prefer someone else to be the king. After all, Wu Ming had been at odds with these nobles for many years. However, the commoners and some of the knights were a little disappointed. Next, one by one, the knights stepped forward to pull out their swords. Some of them knew their limits and tried to pull out their swords lightly. Knowing that they couldn't pull it out, they stopped. Some of them hugged their swords tightly until their faces turned pale. Only then did they walk away unwillingly. Wu Ming saw all of this. He vaguely remembered the faces of those who didn't want to pull out the sword. He was going to recruit these people into the new order of knights. Since Wu Ming became a knight, Wu Ming had always believed that character was more important than strength. Not long after, almost all of the knights had pulled out their swords. There was only one special knight left, and that was Artoria, who was disguised as a man. Because to become a noble knight, one had to be an adult, and Artoria was obviously underage. For this reason, Wu Ming specially applied for a knight title for Artoria. Artoria also passed the test to become a knight, but the nobles still refused to let go because she was not old enough. As a result, Artoria was given a special knight title, and became a special knight. Therefore, the commoners began to ask for a new king. Some wanted to use force to determine the winner, while others wanted Wu Ming to be the new king. This was what most people were shouting for. The nobles were instantly unhappy and immediately objected. What a joke! What was the difference between the two? Everyone knew that the British silver dragon was now the most powerful knight in Britain. Even King Yusuf might not be able to defeat the British silver dragon in force. Of course, for Wu Ming, who was gradually awakening the bloodline of the root dragon, and had greatly improved his physical magic power. If a human could still defeat him, then he should find a piece of tofu and kill himself. Even if it was Kukulin, Wuming estimated that he could defeat him now. After all, Wuming had obtained the second noble phantasm. At this moment, no one was optimistic about the last night. After all, in the eyes of many who did not know the truth, Artoria became a knight because of the British silver dragon Villo. Just as the nobles were loudly objecting to using force to elect a new king, Artoria stood in front of the sword in the stone. She heard a voice. It was Merlin's voice. Before you pick up that thing, it's better to think carefully. Once you pick up that sword, you will no longer be a human until the end. You will be hated by all humans, and you will eventually meet a tragic death. Artoria looked at Wuming. She found that Wuming's eyes were full of support and trust. Then, she resolutely reached out and grabbed the sword in the stone. She pulled hard. Clang. The sound of the sword being unsheathed echoed throughout the sky. At this moment, everyone, whether they were commoners or nobles, was silent. The commoners' eyes were full of hope, while the nobles' faces were full of confusion. Greetings, King. The commoners and nobles were startled by the voice and looked at the source of the voice. Wuming knelt on one knee in front of Artoria. Obviously, he was greeting the new king. Then almost all the knights followed suit and knelt down on one knee. Greetings, King. The voices of the knights were united and resounded through the sky. When the commoners saw this, they hesitated for a moment. Then they followed suit and knelt down shouting, Greetings, King. The nobles clearly wanted to quibble about something. Wuming did not even look at them and shouted again, Greetings, King. This time, Wuming's wooming was mixed with magic. His voice rang in almost everyone's ears. The knights and commoners shouted together, Greetings, King. Greetings, King. Greetings, King. This voice did not stop for a long time. The nobles looked at Artoria, who was holding the sword of the stone high in the sun. The nobles were influenced by the people and the knights. The knights and commoners also shouted together. However, the nobles' voices were still a little unsatisfied. Greetings, King. Wuming looked at Artoria, who was surrounded by the sunlight and the commoners, and muttered, King Arthur, Artoria Pendragon. A new king is born. Chapter 13. It had been 7 days since Artoria pulled out the sword in the stone. During these 7 days, the nobles were in a mess. They complained that the new king was too young. Under Artoria's worried eyes and Merlin's mocking eyes, Wuming visited all the nobles at night. After 7 days, there were no more objections. Instead, the nobles kept praising the new king for being young and promising. They even praised the new king for drawing his sword and calling it the will of God. At night, in the palace, Artoria and Wuming were dealing with documents in the meeting room, while Merlin was preparing for the coronation ceremony. Due to the lack of a king, Artoria started to deal with the documents in advance with Wuming's company. After dealing with the last document of the day, Artoria looked at Wuming. Wuming was also dealing with the last document. Artoria stared at Wuming, who was working on the documents in a daze. A strange light appeared in her eyes. When Wuming finished dealing with the last document, he noticed that Artoria was staring at him. What is it, Leah? Is something the matter? Why nothing. I just want to know how you convinced the nobles. Merlin told me that the nobles are very difficult to deal with. Artoria asked with a red face. Oh, you're talking about those nobles? It's very simple. I just told them, if you're against Al becoming the king, then I'll become the king. I believe that no matter if it's in terms of reputation, experience, or strength, I'm qualified. I believe that the people will also choose me. I told them that. Then the nobles pretended that I was thinking about it, but in fact, they were already panicking. Now they want you to be the king immediately. After all, it's easier for them to deal with you than me. Wuming got up and sat beside Artoria. Of course, there are nobles who support you, such as your foster father Hector and your foster brother Kai. I'm going to form a new order of knights and invite them to join. After all, your foster father and foster brother are also very good knights. While talking, Wuming couldn't help but despise the nobles who opposed Artoria. They couldn't even see the situation clearly. What right did they have to be nobles? Sooner or later, they would be stripped of their titles. My foster father and foster brother. They were indeed excellent knights. Before I met you, my foster father was my role model, and my foster brother had been competing with me in a friendly manner. Now that I think about it, it was a wonderful time. Artoria sighed with emotion. You have to get used to it. After all, you are going to be the king soon. Besides, you have me by your side. Wuming said as he patted Artoria's head. Artoria's face turned red again. Then she said, Don't worry. By the way, Vi, wouldn't it be better if you become the king? Artoria was a little nervous. Zai, why do you say that? Wuming was puzzled. Because you said it yourself. Whether it is reputation, experience, or strength, you are more suitable. Artoria looked into Wuming's eyes and said, Haha. Lia, you have to believe in yourself. Let's not talk about whether I am a local or not. Even if I am, I will not become the king. My favorite thing is traveling. How can I travel if I become the king? Wuming laughed. Artoria looked at Wuming's handsome face that didn't age at all. By the way, Vi, how old are you? I remember that I've known about you for as long as I can remember, Silver Dragon of Britannia, and all the other kings around me have acknowledged your existence. Artoria suddenly thought. In fact, there were many kings on the island of Britain today. Britain was originally ruled by Rome. Because of the civil strife in Rome, Britain became independent. However, at the same time, the disaster of the people came. Originally, it was the demon beasts. Now there was war. Since Wuming was appointed by King Yusef and made a name for himself, he traveled around the island of Britain when Camelot was settled. At the same time, he saved many people and helped many kings. Naturally, the title of the British Silver Dragon appeared. My age. About 30 years old. To be honest, I can't remember the details. Wuming said casually. 30. 30 years old. Are you really blessed by the legendary dragon, Vi? Artoria sighed in amazement. Wuming was laughing in his heart. Merlin once told the public that the British silver dragon Heartfelt was a warrior blessed by the legendary dragon. He was also the knight of the King of Camelot, who was guided by the legendary dragon. When he heard Merlin's words, Wuming was stunned. Wasn't the legendary dragon himself? When he came back to his senses, he immediately gave Merlin a punch. Thanks to this, Wuming's appearance did not change in the past 10 years. No one doubted it. Coupled with Wuming's kind temperament and powerful strength, the people of Camelot were very happy. Even the kings who were on good terms with Camelot would ask Wuming to help if they could not deal with the demon beasts. Of course, this was under the premise that King Yusef agreed. In fact, after King Yusef's death, many kings sent people to find Wuming in private. They wanted to recruit Wuming to their country. Of course, there were some before, but it was not obvious. Now there were all kinds of temptations. If money did not work, they would use treasures. If treasures did not work, they would use weapons. If weapons did not work, they would use titles. If titles did not work, they would use beauties. Some even brought up their own sisters, daughters, and granddaughters. For the kings who gave Wuming a good impression, Wuming politely rejected them. As for the kings who Wuming hated, Wuming did not even care about them. Okay, don't think so much. Even if I am a warrior blessed by the legendary dragon, I am still your knight. I promise, I will always be with you, my king. Your Majesty. Wuming smiled, and his handsome face made Artoria dazed. When she came back to her senses, Artoria lowered her head and said with a red face, Okay, the documents are done. Let's go home. Early to bed early is good for health. You told me that. Artoria pushed Wuming. Realizing the problem, Wuming smiled bitterly and thought, why did I find that I became better looking before? Is this the benefit of the awakening of the origin dragon? By the way, Leah, what's wrong? When you become a king, call yourself the British Red Dragon. Oh, British Red Dragon. Yes, we are the British Red Dragon and White Dragon. A pair. Let's talk about it later. Okay, don't push me. Elia, why is your face so red? Are you sick? No. Okay, let's go home and sleep. Yes, yes, yes. The moonlight came out from the dark clouds, illuminating the path of the man and woman. Chapter 14. 3 days later, Artoria, who had disguised herself as a man, accepted the coronation ceremony of the Pope. To be honest, Wuming was disgusted by the coronation ceremony. After all, as a king, he had to let a believer be crowned. Well, although the West had always been like this, Wuming was not interested in gods. It was not that Wuming did not believe in the existence of gods. In this world full of mysteries, all kinds of things that people imagined were possible, gods definitely existed in the world of the M-shaped moon. Even in the ordinary world that Wuming lived in, who could guarantee that there were no gods before? After the coronation ceremony, Wuming did not leave immediately. After all, as the symbol of Camelo, Wuming still had to greet the ambassadors sent by the kings. This was the legendary diplomacy. After the ambassadors left, Wuming sat in the hall of the palace and let out a long sigh. Sigh? Wei, are you all right? You look like you're having a hard time, Artoria asked Wuming. As a king, she had to greet the ambassadors together with Wuming. I'm fine. I'm just not used to being a politician, Wuming said lazily. Politician? You have invented a very good word for it, Vi, Artoria said, reading Wuming's modern language carefully and admiringly. Ahaha. Actually, someone taught me this term, Wuming said a bit awkwardly. By the way, about the night order I mentioned, have you thought about it? Wuming asked. Well, I think it's good. We can do it, Artoria said seriously. No, the recruitment of the night order must be strict. Ability is not the most important thing. Character is the most important. Artoria raised her young face and looked at Wuming. Don't worry. I've thought about it. In the end, you will be the final judge. Wuming touched Artoria's face and said. Is that so? Why are you touching my face? Artoria asked with a red face. To be honest, every time Wuming touched her body, Artoria would blush. Sometimes it was slightly red, and sometimes it was as red as a monkey's butt. Because when I think that the owner of such a young face has to shoulder the burden of the whole country, I feel that God is unfair. Wuming's eyes were filled with pity. After saying that, Artoria's face was no longer red. And Artoria were both silent. When I knew that I was going to be a king, I was very scared. Artoria paused and continued. Merlin told me that I was born to be a king. Ever since I could remember, he had been teaching me everything that a king should have. During the day, I kept practicing. At night, Merlin taught me magic in my dreams. Slowly, I got tired of it. Wuming's hand stopped touching Artoria's face. Because I was scared. The more I learned, the more I felt that I was not capable enough. I was scared that I could not become the king that Merlin and the people expected, until what? Until I met you. Artoria looked into Wuming's eyes. Her emerald eyes were filled with emotions. Ever since I could remember, I knew the story of the Silver Dragon of Britain. As a knight, he was very good. He was noble, powerful, smart, and kind. Everyone in Camelot praised him. Slowly, I started to work hard to become the Silver Dragon of Britain. Wuming put down his hand and listened to Artoria carefully. Back then, you met me in the forest where I often practiced. You said that you wanted to take me as your squire. I was so happy that I moved out of my foster father's house and moved to your house. Artoria lowered her head and smiled. A few years later, when I learned about your relationship with Merlin, I realized that the encounter in the forest could have been arranged. But I was still very happy. Because of you, Merlin had to slow down my training. Because of you, I was able to taste the joy of being a young girl. Because of you, I was able to feel your love. Finally, because of you, I got the motivation to become a king. Artoria raised her head and looked at Wuming again. She was about to throw herself into his arms. Artoria's mouth opened slightly. Wuming's pupils shrunk. He was a little surprised. If he was not mistaken, the last sentence, which was so weak that he almost did not hear it clearly, was, Wuming did not move, but his eyes kept darting around. Wuming did not expect that Artoria would have so many thoughts. Wuming thought about it carefully and understood. A young girl was told that she had to bear a heavy burden since she was born. Coincidentally, there was a perfect and handsome idol who was shouldering the burden of a young girl. After a deliberately arranged encounter, the young girl and the idol met and spent more than 10 years together. During these years, the idol took care of the young girl in every possible way. The young girl was very happy and gradually fell in love with the idol. When the young girl officially accepted the burden, the young girl confessed everything to the idol. Wuming now felt that Artoria's current situation was caused by him. A girl's heart is so mysterious, Wuming thought. Artoria looked at Wuming, who did not want to hug her. She lowered her head and her face was a little pale. Artoria stood up and said, "Well, I have something to do. Wuming hugged Artoria, who was already petite, in his arms. Artoria was a little stunned at first, but when she realized what was going on, she hugged Wuming tightly. Artoria's face was pressed against Wuming's chest, which was not wearing armor. She listened to the strong and powerful heartbeat of the king and smiled. "Yeah, I'm sorry," Wuming said. Artoria, who was in his arms, was stunned. "I can't promise that I can be with you until the end, but I will try my best to be with you until the end. This is the biggest promise I can give you." Wuming signed a contract with King Yusef. As long as Wuming fulfilled the contract, he would be freed. As a person who did not belong to this era, Wuming would most likely return to his era after he was freed. This was what Merlin told Wuming. Wuming immediately told Artoria his concern. Maybe it was because she trusted Wuming or because she learned from Merlin. Artoria did not change her expression. She just said lightly, "It's enough." The two of them hugged each other and blended together. Chapter 15. The next day, in her office in the palace, Artoria was sitting on a chair with her back against the floor-to-ceiling window. She was going through the documents she had submitted that day seriously. Merlin and Wuming were standing on either side of Artoria, giving her advice. Wuming was actually learning from her. After all, compared to being a politician, Merlin was more suitable than Wuming. After all, he was older. Just kidding. Wuming had also learned a lot about the skills of a politician when he was learning from Skaha. In addition, Wuming had dealt with the nobles and kings of various countries over the years, so he had learned a lot. However, compared to Merlin, who had taught Artoria how to be a king, Wuming had to admit defeat. Time went by little by little. When Artoria finished the last document under Merlin's guidance, Merlin stretched his body and said, "Let's go." Phew. The speed of processing today is obviously faster. It seems that soon, the king will be able to process documents alone. Wuming nodded and said, "Yes, the king is indeed growing fast. She is one step closer to unifying the island of Britain. I have to thank the two of you. After all, without you, I wouldn't be who I am today," Artoria said calmly. Since last night, Wuming and Artoria had agreed that one would live as the king, and the other would continue to live as the king's knight. This led to the separation of superior and subordinate in the palace office. "By the way, it's getting late. It's time for dinner." Artoria clenched her right fist and punched the palm of her left hand. Hearing this, Wuming and Merlin were speechless. Wuming looked at Merlin and said with his eyes, "Why didn't I realize that the king has such a big appetite before?" Merlin also looked at Wuming. Maybe it's because I pulled out the sword in the stone, maybe." Artoria had already walked to the door. She turned around and asked, "What's wrong?" "Villo Merlin, it's time to eat. Let's go, or we won't have enough time." "You've eaten so much, it'd be strange if you had enough time," Wuming and Merlin shouted in their hearts. Okay. Coming. The dividing line of rice. After the meal, Merlin said, "I'm going to guide my new student." Then he left the palace. According to Wuming's understanding, Merlin's new student was the daughter of a noble. Other than his face that made him want to Wuming from time to time, Merlin's only flaw was that he liked to hook up with little girls. Is that so? I believe that if it's you, you should be able to guide that student well. This was the king who did not know the truth. Okay, my king. Let's not talk about Merlin for now. What do you think about the new knight order that I mentioned earlier? Wuming laughed to divert the king's attention. I think it's a good name. Right. Right. How about we call it the Knights of the Round Table? Artoria blushed and said. My king, did you think of this name after seeing the round table that we ate at just now? The more Wu Ming thought about it, the more likely it seemed. The famous Knights of the Round Table had a name just because of a meal? Ow. How could that be? Right, I just remembered the round stone table that my foster father gave me a few days ago. My foster father meant that I could use that big table for meetings in the future. I thought that since we're using a round table, why don't we call it the Knights of the Round Table? Artoria looked like she was taking responsibility and did not want to eat anymore. Okay, my king. I'll trust you this time. But that table is okay when there are not many people. It's a bit small when there are too many people. Well, we can build a big round table in the future. We'll use this one first. Artoria blushed. Yes, Lia is the best. Wu Ming patted Artoria's head again. Sob. Didn't you say that we have to maintain the relationship between a king and a knight? Why are you like this? Artoria cried. Didn't you say that we don't have to maintain the relationship between a king and a knight when there's no one around? Sure enough, it's more comfortable this way. I'm not used to being a loyal knight. Wu Ming stretched and said. You're just Lia's lover. I'm the king now, not Lia. Please respect me. Artoria's face was full of shame and anger. Oh. Is that so, my king? Wu Ming smirked. Wait. What are you doing? Wait. Ugh. Seeing Wu Ming's face getting closer and closer, Artoria panicked. Finally, the two faces met. Artoria's eyes widened. She couldn't believe that her first kiss was gone just like that. Wu Ming only kissed her lightly and left immediately. What do you think, my king? I respect you very much. Wu Ming continued to smirk. In the end, Wu Ming was still moved by the young girl in front of him who he had watched grow up. Although it was somewhat difficult to say it out loud. As he was almost 30 years old, it didn't matter. Anyway, as the root dragon of the long-lived species, Wu Ming wasn't even a baby at 30 years old. Besides, Wu Ming wasn't the kind of person who procrastinated. If he liked someone, he would want to be together. Of course, Maeve's situation was special. Wu Ming only treated Maeve as a little sister who lacked love. Alright, let's get down to business. Looking at Artoria's blushing face, Wu Ming felt that he should give Lia some dignity as the king. After saying that, he went straight to his office. As expected, the king is still a little girl now. She's still a long way from King Arthur, who was good at war. Wu Ming thought to himself. Artoria, who was still blushing, calmed down and followed him to his office. What I mean is, the knights can come from different countries and even have different faiths. The meaning of the round table is equality and the world. All the knights of the round table are equal and partners. There is no difference between the round table and the round table. Everything is for the king and for Britain. Wu Ming told her the definition of the round table that he knew before. After all, it was better not to change history. Besides, the definition of the Knights of the Round Table was really good. However, when Wu Ming thought that he did not change history, history had changed a long time ago. Knights of the Round Table, huh? As expected of the Silver Dragon of Britain. You think differently. I was just thinking. Ahem. Artoria seemed to have realized that she almost said something wrong. She coughed. What are you thinking? Wu Ming smirked again. Ahem. Just like what you think. Artoria glared at Wu Ming. That's what you think for now. If there are any changes, we'll talk about it later, Artoria said seriously. Yes, my king. Wu Ming's expression also became serious. After all, even if they were lovers, there was still a hierarchy when it came to important matters. Besides, Wu Ming respected Artoria's position as the king. After that, the two began to talk about other things about Camelot. The king was also growing up slowly. Chapter 16. The banquet lasted until nightfall. After everyone left, Wu Ming asked the maids to leave and helped the drunk Artoria to her room. You said you can't drink anymore. You must be drunk. Wu Ming sighed. Artoria saw that it was Wu Ming who was helping her, so she leaned her body against him. In the end, it was Wu Ming who was holding Artoria in his arms and moving forward little by little. Ugh. I didn't drink that much. I'm so tired. Vi. My head hurts. Artoria rubbed her head against Wu Ming's chest. Was it because Wu Ming didn't wear his silver armor today? Wu Ming shook his head. Wu Ming waved his hand, and a few lune runes appeared. Wu Ming put his hand on Artoria's forehead. Do you feel better, Lia? Wu Ming used the lune rune to purify her. Much better. Artoria opened her drunken eyes. At this moment, there was only sobriety in her eyes. By the way, Vi, did you secretly use the lune rune on yourself? How come you're fine after drinking so much? Artoria looked at Wu Ming angrily. Wu Ming laughed and patted Artoria's head. Now that's an adult, little Lia. I'm the king. Don't hit my head. Yes. As they were talking, Wu Ming and Artoria arrived at Artoria's room. Let's go in, Lia. I've talked to Wire. You just need to talk to her. Why are you calling her Wire? You sound so close. Seeing that Artoria was angry again, Wu Ming patted his face and laughed. She promised to keep it a secret for you. Alright, don't be jealous. Let's go in. I'll stay here tonight. What's wrong, Vi? Is something going to happen? Artoria asked seriously. Nothing. I'm just worried that some maids or knights might come by and eavesdrop on us. Of course it was a lie. What really worried Wu Ming was Morgan Le Fay. He was worried that the woman would do something on Artoria's wedding night. Just in case, Wu Ming decided to stay at the door. Alright, but if anything happens you have to call me, Artoria said. Artoria said worriedly. How could she not see that Morgan Le Fay was acting strangely today? Although her sister Wang had always been strange. Alright, I know. Let's go in. Tomorrow is the first meeting of the Knights of the Round Table. Wu Ming pushed Artoria into the room. After closing the door, Wu Ming quickly moved his hands in the air. Lines of lune runes appeared in the air. Then, a large number of lune runes were attached to the walls of Artoria's room. The whole room was sealed, including the windows. Phew. Wu Ming took a deep breath and took out the armor from the lune rune. He put it on with magic. However, he did not wear a helmet. Now the lune rune on Wu Ming's body had been turned into a golden tattoo that looked like a dragon's head. It was tattooed on Wu Ming's right arm. This noble phantasm was a support noble phantasm that did not have any actual attack power. The name of the noble phantasm was Dragonist. The documents that Wu Ming submitted to Artoria were also kept in Dragonist. Now everything that Wu Ming had was stored in Dragonist. It was safe and convenient. Noble Phantasm was one of Wu Ming's greatest weapons. A safe and convenient independent space like this was not something that anyone could have. Wu Ming fastened X Silver, Meteor Silver, to his waist and activated Yggdrasil, to turn it into a silver arm and put it on his left arm. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and waited for Morgan Le Fay to arrive. The moon slowly rose. When the moon was in the middle, the lights in the corridor were extinguished by the wind outside the window. After a while, Wu Ming opened his eyes. Logically speaking, there should be knights patrolling the palace at night. However, it was completely dark and there was no one around. Obviously, something was wrong. Wu Ming used his mana to sense the surroundings and Artoria's room. He could not sense anyone in the room or around him. Wu Ming also sensed the strange atmosphere around him. Illusion. Wu Ming was shocked. How could I be affected by an illusion? This is not the era of the gods. There shouldn't be any illusions that work on me. Wu Ming closed his eyes and used his own mana to stimulate the power of the will in his mind. Ugh. Wu Ming groaned and opened his eyes. The scene in front of him changed back to the previous corridor. The lights were not blown out and were still burning. However, there was an additional figure in front of Wu Ming. Your Highness Morgan Le Fay, what brings you here so late at night? Wu Ming wiped the golden blood from the corner of his mouth. He also used his mana to check Artoria and Guinevere's room. Oh, I see that Mr. Villo is still guarding the king and queen's room. I was worried that you might be lonely, so I came to see you. Morgan Le Fay smiled. I'm fine. If you don't have anything else to say, you should go to bed early. Wu Ming said calmly. All right, Mr. Villo. I'll take my leave now. Good night. Morgan turned around and left. Wu-ming watched Morgan Le Fay's figure disappear around the corner of the corridor. Wu-ming did not expect Morgan to leave. Of course, Wu-ming did not believe that she was here to visit him. That woman would not do something so boring. After checking Artoria and Guinevere's condition, Wu-ming pulled himself together and started his night watch again. It seems that I have to find a way to train and use my mental power in the future. Wu-ming was sure that Morgan used a kamikaze illusion on him. It was not that Wu-ming did not believe Morgan, but Wu-ming knew her too well. The person who knows you best is your opponent. This sentence was not without reason. Wu-ming guessed that Morgan might have used a kamikaze magic tool. Not to mention that kamikaze magic was lost. Even if it was, Morgan Le Fay could not. No, with her talent, it's not impossible for her to learn 1 or 2 kamikaze magic. Wu-ming rubbed his chin and thought. I just don't know what he did tonight. I just don't know if Mordred will be born. Morgan did not succeed in meeting King Arthur. Wu-ming was sure of this because even if she used spatial magic, the Lune rune would react. Wu-ming used the 18 primordial lune. Wu-ming did not believe that Morgan could avoid the primordial lune's magic. Forget it. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. I'll just take it one step at a time. Slowly the sun rose. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.